Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So Connor Hughes of SNY was sharing his thoughts on what he thinks the New York Jets are going to be doing at the quarterback position in 2026, right? It was a discussion over on, I believe, the SNY YouTube channel. Of course, I'll leave the link down below in the description box, but Hughes was basically saying that he thinks the Jets traded Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams, acquired these extra draft picks to not round out the roster, but to acquire extra ammunition to shoot up to the top of the draft to select the quarterback that they want. Now, for me personally, I think I disagree with it, right? I think I disagree with that way of thinking here because, it's not like the Jets just traded some, random players off the roster just trying to accumulate picks. No, these are two cornerstones, two young players who are in the prime of their career, who are locked up under big deals, and they've been productive players, right, for this Jets team throughout the years in Quinnen and Sauce. From my perspective, it really seemed like the Jets, and I think they actually Darren Muji actually talked about this in the press conference. When it came to the Colts, they were very aggressive in their pursuit of Gardner. It was more so the Colts pushing to make that happen as opposed to the Jets shopping him to acquire picks. In other words, I think that the Jets traded Gardner probably because the offer was too good to pass up. In regards to Quinnen, in his words, he said that he was just kind of frustrated with all the losing and everything. And really the bottom line is, since the Jets drafted Quinnen, the only thing that he's done is produce and lose. He's drafted in 2019. He's been a really good player for a long time, and the team has not even been 500 his entire career. So I understand the frustration there. And so that's number one, right? I don't think the Jets hit the trade deadline with the thought process of, hey, we need to move our valuable pieces here to stockpile ammunition to shoot up in this year's class to the number one overall pick. Here's another question that I would have in the event that that's the case. Why wasn't Breece Hall traded? Why wasn't Quincy Williams traded? Why wasn't Alan Lazard traded? Now, Lazard, arguably, who would give up anything of value? But, again, if Darren Muji's willing to move off of Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams, and the purpose is to not round out the roster with these picks, but it's in fact to trade up, right? You're stockpiling picks to put out the best offer to make sure you can shoot up to one. Not only would trading Breece, trading Quincy give you more picks to go out and do that, but it also makes your team worse. In other words, the chances of winning decrease on Sundays. And again, if this is the plan for Darren Muji, I need to land the top quarterback in this class. I want to trade to one. Wouldn't it make more sense to, again, add more draft picks to sweeten the offer and to lessen the blow to your franchise in the event of a trade up, and simultaneously lessening your chance to win on Sundays? So maybe instead of finishing with the 9th pick, they're finishing with the 5th pick or the 4th pick or the 3rd pick. So you're getting closer and closer and closer to the top with each loss. Doesn't that make more sense? Especially considering that Quincy and Breece are on expiring deals and there's no guarantee that either of them would be back. And so for me, that would be my main pushback on that way of thinking. The third point on kind of why I question that is we've all seen how the Jets have played this season. They have a ton of roster holes, a lot of vacancies. We have a talent deficiency. We have a depth deficiency. What's the quickest way, most efficient way to add consistent talent and depth? Draft picks. And the Jets have extra. So is it real? And by the way, I'm not saying trading up in the draft is a bad idea. But what I am saying is if you are mortgaging, if you are putting together a package where you're not going to be outbid by anybody and you're willing to throw in first round pick after first round pick after first round pick to go up and land a quarterback, you have got to make sure that not only is that quarterback legit, not only is that guy going to be the franchise guy, but you also have a plan, and you have another plan to surround him with talent, not just with pass catchers, but with an offensive line, with the defense, with the coaching staff, and an offensive system, and probably, arguably most importantly here, a realistic, functional timeline on when to see him. Not this whole Joe Douglas, let's just draft Zach Wilson, throw him into the starting lineup. Yeah, he's the starter. Does he have to earn it? Nope. Does he have a veteran quarterback to learn off of? Nope. Does he have a lot of weapons at his disposal? Nope. Does he have a great offensive line? Nope. First year head coach and Robert Saleh, first year offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur. Zach, do everything. Please save the franchise. Sam Darnold, did he have a great offensive line? Did he have tons of weapons to throw to? No, it kind of felt like, can you save Todd Bowles' job? That's what it really felt like there. Cannot go down that path again. Cannot do it. And we will have answers, right? By April, we will know how many holes are filled. We will know how many free agents are brought in. And so we'll see how it plays out. But again, the Jets have a lot of needs. Let's just list them. Let's just go down the list right now. It's mid to late November. Let's list off all in totality, the needs for the New York Jets. Not really going in like order of importance here because that's obviously debatable, but let's just go through the list. So the Jets need 1000% another edge rusher. I don't care if you want to swing for the fences, you want to take one up at the top of the draft and go get like your version of like an Aiden Hutchinson, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa type of player. Not saying that there's an edge rusher in this class that is like that, but that's the way of thinking, right? If you select an edge rusher in the top 10, he's probably going to be your number one option. And you're now rotating Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson in and out, along with this top 10 rookie. But he would be the primary go-to option. They could go with that mid-tier route, right? Maybe attack edge in the second round or with that second first rounder, or maybe they want to add someone like Kwity Paye, who I've been pretty high on. And I do feel like from a systematic standpoint, he would make sense for what this Wilkes-Glenn defense wants to do, especially as that rotating edge 3, the guy that can come in and come out, come in, come out. You're essentially downgrading Michael Clemens and you're upgrading with Kwity Paye, so he becomes your rotational third edge. And if you look at how Wilkes and Glenn like to rotate edge, guys in and out of the lineup, think about just how many times you've seen Braden McGregor, Michael Clemens, Tyler Barron this season with a healthy Jermaine, with a healthy McDonald. You're seeing these guys quite a lot. And same could be said with defensive tackle. That is another major need for this team. I think we just need one more piece there. Yeah, I'm excited about Mozzie Smith's future. Harrison Phillips is a proven, NFL player at this point. Juwan Briggs, he's young, but he's flashed. I like his overall potential, but I still feel like we need one more. Could someone like Peter Woods be, a potential option there? I think right now he would come in and be a humongous day one upgrade over what we currently have. And again, it just helps the rotation. It helps the talent and it helps the depth. So edge and D tackle, two massive needs. Sticking on defense, we desperately need a free safety. Andre Sisco is not only just hurt for the remainder of the season, but he's been disappointing when he's been out there, and he's only on a 1-year deal. So I think free safety is a humongous need for this Jets squad, and it cannot continue to be overlooked. Ideally Sisco would have worked out, but we have to call it like it is. Not really working out. And I prefer Malachi Moore in the strong safety type of role. But if you want to add a third safety to the mix as like a versatile backup guy, you can. I'm not going to push back on it, but I really feel like just adding that starting free safety is going to be a big priority for this Jets team via free agency or the draft. So those are the three big positions of need on defense. And it's funny because like you listen to like the draft insiders and whatnot, they always say, well, they traded Sauce Gardner, so corner is like the biggest need on this team outside of QB. I kind of disagree with that. I think Azareye'h Thomas was drafted in the 3rd round, and that was looked at as, okay, you're going best player available, someone who fits the Glenn system. He's being handpicked by Aaron Glenn here. Yeah, he might not have to play right now, but in time, he will have to play. And we're approaching next season, and it's looking like he's going to have to play. I don't know if the Jets are willing to move off of Azareye'h Thomas in one season, or really 1.5 year of tape. Of course, you have Brown Lee. I expect him to be in the fold moving forward. And then Brandon Stevens is continuing to play some really, really impressive football as of late. Started off pretty rocky those first 3 games, but since then has been pretty rock solid in my opinion. So I think if we do add a corner, it would maybe be a depth guy, or maybe you're drafting someone on day 3. I also feel like we lack a good coverage linebacker. Jamie Sherwood, as much as he's impressive at run defense, just him in coverage, him with his back to the quarterback, it's just a liability. He's one of the not so great coverage linebackers in the NFL when you're looking at the starters. It's concerning. It's concerning. That cannot continue. I mean, Josh McDaniels he was torching the middle of the field. He was exposing Sherwood in coverage. So that is an area that the Jets have got to be better in, whether it's signing someone or drafting someone, but adding a athletic, quicker linebacker who can cover guys, whether it's a bigger player like a tight end or running back out in the flat, or someone who can drop back quickly into coverage and be able to neutralize slot wide receivers on like little curl routes, hook routes over the middle of the field. And so that's just on defense, right? We haven't even gotten to offense. So quarterback obviously is the biggest need for this team, but we also have to take a look at wide receiver. Garrett Wilson's a for sure thing, but I just would feel more comfortable if we had at least one more player there. One more proven guy, whether that's a Juwan Jennings. I see Alec Pierce's name get brought up a lot. I don't think I think 100% he's going to be re-signing with the Colts, especially, I felt like he was going to be back with the Colts anyway. Then they trade Adonai Mitchell, who wasn't getting in the game because of Alec Pierce being there. I for sure see him going back to Indianapolis. But Juwan Jennings, Jacoby Myers potentially, there's going to be some wide receiver options for this Jet squad. Maybe a Malachi Lemon with that second first round pick. Wide receivers a massive need along with quarterback. We also have to take a look at interior offensive line. Simpson, free agent. Josh Myers, free agent. AVT, free agent. So if you want to go with a guard and a center, Tyler Linderbaum, and you keep Tippmann at guard, okay, I'm cool with that. Or if you want to take Tippmann and you move him back to center and you maybe re-sign Simpson and you draft another guard or whatever, however the Jets want to do it, I'm cool with. But Mushi better be prepared, Glenn better be prepared to add multiple interior offensive linemen who can play today. That don't, drafting a guard in round 6 does not equate to, okay, you solved one of the guard positions. No, you need for sure things. So big picture, macro perspective, this Jets team is far from complete, far from perfect, far from being a 13-win squad. Again, needing help all across the defensive line at edge and D tackle, maybe a depth corner, a starting free safety, maybe a depth linebacker, right? A wide receiver or two, depending on how Mitchell and Mechie work out this season. Obviously, quarterback, multiple interior offensive linemen. That's a lot of needs. That is a lot of needs. And keep in mind, Muji figured out tight end with Mason Taylor. He figured out right tackle with Armand Membu. Malachi Moore looks like a solid option at strong safety. Thankfully, we have Azareye'h Thomas, so we don't have to pivot one of these draft picks to going corner up at the top of the draft. There's not a pressure like, okay, we have to spend this top 10 pick or this first round pick on a corner. We have at least a playable option who can grow and get better. So this roster was in rough shape when JD got fired. Rough shape, depth and needs all over the place. So to bring it back to the start, I just can't see Darren Muji, who I'm going to assume signed a 5 to a 6-year deal, is not trading away core homegrown players in Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner to acquire all these draft picks, to then trade these draft picks to outbid anybody to go out and land a quarterback, to then drop into this roster and say, yeah, we need some help on the offensive line. Oh, we need some help on defense. Oh, we need some more pass rushers. We need some more pass catchers. And again, I'm not saying trading up is a bad idea, but when it starts to look like you're going to be dealing multiple ones, let's just say the Jets finish at 6 and it's going to cost the 6th pick and 2 firsts. And the Bears traded 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and DJ Moore to go from 9 to 1, and that was to draft Bryce Young with CJ Stroud at 2. We talked about what Jacksonville had to give up in last year's draft, right? They had to give up 5. They had to give up their second-round pick. They had to give up a 4th-round pick and a future 1 to go from 5 to 2. They didn't even come up for a quarterback. They came up for a wide receiver corner hybrid in Travis Hunter. This idea that the Jets are only going to have to give up 1 first-round pick or a first and a second to go to 1, potentially 6 to 1, 7 to 1, 8 to 1. for the, right now it's looking like Mendoza's leading the pack to go out and to be QB1. In the event that Cleveland doesn't get it, or New Orleans doesn't get it, or the Raiders don't get it, the Raiders have a lot of problems, offensive line issues, right? But still, if the Raiders, I think the Raiders are going to have a top 5 pick. So if the Browns get that first overall pick, what's your plan then? To continue just to stack more firsts into the trade offer because we're that sold? I'm not too sure if that's the best plan of attack. I love Mendoza. I love his fit with the Jets. I think him and Engstrand would work pretty well together, right? I think Mendoza would also embrace the challenge of coming to New York and, stepping into an environment that, quite frankly, like, we haven't had a franchise quarterback in a long, long time. I think Mendoza would be up to the challenge for that. Just, from a mental standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, he checks a lot of boxes. I like Mendoza a lot. But again, when you're starting to talk about, okay, we're going to start packaging 2 to 3 first round picks plus more. And granted, the Jets have excess of, extra draft picks here. They're in this surplus of picks. It won't hit the franchise as hard. But we've talked about it, right? What is the quickest way out of the rebuild? Think of the Detroit Lions, right? This long-time losing purgatory. They actually had a franchise quarterback in Stafford. They had literally a legendary wide receiver in Calvin Johnson, and they were still losing every single season outside of just a couple. That was a team that really hit the draft hard. They acquired extra draft picks, and they hit on their draft picks, right? Think about all the newcomers: Hutchinson, Penei Sewell, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, right? Those are just first rounders. Jack Campbell, right? Kirby Joseph in the mid rounds. Amon-Ra St. Brown in round 4. These guys are coming into the fold, and they're being developed there. Levi Onwuzurike, I know he hasn't really lived up to the draft potential, but and he's dealt with injuries, but he's still a rotational piece. Aleem McNeil, who just signed a massive deal. So I think we should, if anything, we should look at how the Detroit Lions have operated, how the Denver Broncos have operated. It's always been draft develop. It's not been this aggressive push, especially if we have, freaking 6-7 team needs. Because again, yes, you can do that. Yes, you can go land your franchise quarterback. But then, of course, you have this counter argument. Well, are you really giving that quarterback the best chance to succeed? By the way, I'm not saying, you have to be A+ at every position to draft a quarterback. No, obviously not. Look at, Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. They took him at 1. There's been some losing there, but it looks like Jacksonville with Liam Cohen, they're winning a bunch of games, right? CJ Stroud, same thing. Bryce Young is starting to turn the corner. You could talk about Matt Ryan back with the Atlanta Falcons, 3rd overall. Drake May with the Patriots, Jaden Daniels at 2, Caleb Williams at 1. These teams aren't perfect, ideal situations in every single case. And I'm not saying that for the Jets. But what I am saying, the point that I am trying to make, is that I just don't feel like Darren Muji is he traded 2 big household names to get extra draft picks to trade up in this upcoming draft in the middle of the season. So we don't even know the draft order yet. But simultaneously, we're keeping Quincy, who's helping us win games. He's keeping Breece Hall, who both players might be off the team. We could get more picks and lessen the chance to win. Again, if that's Muji's thought process, we need to trade up. It just doesn't really make much sense to me, in my opinion. If I'm the Jets, the way I'm looking at this draft, and again, we will have so much more of a clearer picture on where the final draft position is in the first round, right? When we have that answer, if the season ends and we're at 2, okay, the conversation changes massively compared to if we're at 9, if we're at 7, or if we're at 6. It's a completely different situation. Franchise altering changes. And I know it sounds crazy because it's just a couple of draft picks, but that's the type of impact here we're talking about with this, trading up for the draft, landing a quarterback, not having a quarterback. What do we do? Not to mention all the rumors about the Jets packaging maybe some of these draft picks to go out and land a proven veteran. That is a whole nother story. I think there are some maybe some options out there that are going to be more realistic and cheaper. You know, if you are a fan of Mac Jones or a fan of Kirk Cousins or a fan of Kyler Murray. One name I'm just kind of monitoring from afar is Jalen Hurts, because you're kind of thinking with all of the, you know, there's so much chatter, there's so much noise, there's so much negative feedback surrounding Jalen Hurts and that Eagles offense. Do the Eagles decide to shake it up? You know, just throwing that out there. I'm not sure. Tyson from Let's Talk Jets Radio has talked about Jalen Hurts, you know, his leadership style, just his kind of hard-nosed, blue-collar approach, work hard, work hard, work hard. He thinks that mentality, that mindset would actually fit really, really well with the Jets locker room and kind of what Aaron Glenn has preached so far. But again, whole nother conversation. When we get that draft positioning, we'll have a better understanding of the path that makes the most sense for this Jets squad. But I think if we just want to simplify it right now, and again, we're talking November here, I think the way I'm approaching it, if a quarterback is on the board that I absolutely love, I not only think he fits the system and fits the team right now, but I can truly see him playing for this team for the next 10 to 15 years, and he wants to come to the Jets and he's ready for that challenge, then you take him. Who am I to push back on a general manager and a whole front office and a whole coaching staff pushing for one player at the quarterback position when you don't have a long-term option at that position, right? If a quarterback is there, I have no problem at all taking your guy. If you love him, if you like him, don't take him. If the quarterback is projected not to be there, again, the Jets finish at 4 or 6 or 7 or whatever, you can monitor what the teams in front of you are willing to move back for. I think there's another team that could be actually pretty aggressive when it comes to moving up to 1 for a quarterback. And I think it's going to be the Cleveland Browns, because this is another team that has extra draft capital. They have ammo, and you just feel like, it's either Stefanski's going to be there and he's going to be on his last chance, and you just kind of feel like, hey, we moved back last season for a reason. Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, all these guys that they're rolling through. Jameis Winston a couple years ago. It's just letting Baker Mayfield go, so I could very well see Barry and Stefanski just saying, screw it, we have to do this. We have to go out and land QB1 in the draft. We need to trade up in the event that they don't get the first overall pick in the first place. I mean, that defense is built to win right now. And I do think Cleveland has some offensive problems at wide receiver and offensive line and whatnot. I think running back wise, they're pretty damn solid. Tight end wise, they're pretty solid with Fannin and Njoku. But I think if you're Muji, you make some calls. You see what the price tag is. If it's realistic, if it's fair, okay, that's a different conversation than just coming to the table saying, we're going to outbid everybody. We traded Quinnen, traded Sauce to get all these picks to beat any offer out there to go up and land Mendoza. But now we have to fill the rest of the team out. And yeah, you can sign free agents, but that, in my opinion, you can't really build an entire roster. You can't fill 7 needs through free agent signings. At some point, the cap space is going to be, at its limit. You don't want to be in a situation like Atlanta where they have some positions that they got to figure out. They have a culture question as well. But as far as the 2026 offseason is concerned, they don't have a first-round pick, and I think they're projected to only have like $5 million in cap space. Like, if you're a Falcon fan, you're like, no first-round pick and $5 million in space. And of course, this is before cuts here, before a potential Kirk Cousins trade, so that number could go up. But still, it's a lot different compared to the Jets right now, where you're looking at it and you're like, 116 mil, pretty good spot. Oh, 2 first-round picks, awesome. 2 second-round picks, even better. Doesn't end there. 2027, 3 first-rounders. Let's freaking go. That can really jumpstart the rebuild. So for me, I could understand a minimal trade package, going to whoever lands the first overall pick, right? If you're trying to shoot from 3 to 1 or 2 to 1, it's not really that catastrophic, that, big of a deal. But if you start talking, okay, you got to go from 8 to 1, 7 to 1, 6 to 1, 3 firsts, and it becomes this, this ever growing package that you're really cutting into your biggest asset right now. I mean, ask any team out there or any fan of a team that's bad. What if I could give you anything? If I could give you, the top free agent on the market, if I could give you $100 million in cap space, if I could give you anything, what would it be? They would probably say, realistically speaking, I'm not saying like take Patrick Mahomes. Any of the realistic options, free cap space, the top 3 players in free agency in a given class, they would probably respond, can I have multiple first round picks? And over the next 2 seasons, the Jets have 5. Not 2, not 3, 5. I mean, if you just want to look at this class alone, I am totally fine, totally fine sticking at, let's just call it 5, right? If, I don't know, an edge rusher's there that you love, just take the edge rusher. You can go out and snag a wide receiver with that other first round pick or something like that. And then you have the 2 seconds. I mean, that could be 4 starters. 4 starters in rounds 1 and 2. That's assuming. Like, we're not talking about what's happening on day 3. We're not talking about any free agent signings. Think about right now the impact that Membu has had, that Mason Taylor has had on this Jets team. Throw on top of it 4 more players. Again, how much better would the Jets be with just the 2 1s and 2 2s this year? I'm going to say that is a big improvement. Without any free agents, without a 4th round pick, 5th round pick, 6th, 7th, 4 players right there, 2 firsts, 2 seconds on cheap deals, the Jets got a lot better there. Then you start looking at 2027. Yeah, that gets you fired up as a fan. So that's just my 2 cents on it. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Right now, of course, you got to be in the quarterback market. You got to be looking at guys up at the top of the draft. But if he's not there, don't force it. Or if you don't love him, don't force it. There's no need to force it. I understand we all are searching and we're desperately, we're starving for a franchise quarterback, but that only makes you more willing to be aggressive in certain situations. And that might not be the best call for this Jets team. Again, just my opinion, not saying I'm right. That's just my preferred route. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, go Jets.